Hi, my name's Kathy Millett, and this week we're looking at how to do complex track work. Not the actual doing the track work, but the tarmac around it. So in the real world, you often get inset trackage running down streets, and the railway do everything they possibly can to make it easy to run. So they've got distinct flangeways, but also so that people can still drive cars and walk over it without having huge problems with tripping over things. You can see this has got a zebra crossing, that's a crosswalk in some places of the world, going right over it. Now this is Weymouth, beautiful place to visit. There's not many trains running there now, unfortunately. So I've got some really nice bit of dock track work. It's just basic Pico track. And I've used card on all the straight bits. And you can see that they're very easy to do. You know, it's straight. You can cut the card exactly straight. You can put it in between the track work and it works wonderful. And you can use carborundum grit and all those things that I've used in previous weeks on it, put the cobbles in, and it does look really good and easy to do. And then you hit the points. Now, turnouts, sorry for those in other parts of the world. Now, what do you do with those? What can you do? Well, you could trace paper and use it to cut and all sorts of things like that. But actually, I like using foam because foam is very easy to transfer the sort of the cut marks on, and it's slightly forgiving because it's a little bit squishy. So I'm going to show you how to use foam around your track work. So what kind of foam do you use? Well, I've got HobbyCraft foam sheets. Now these are very, very cheap, easy to buy. I've got them in black, I've got them in grey. You can get them in a multitude of colours, but I don't recommend the red. They're not too thick. This is a couple of mil probably. So they sit actually very nicely on top of your track work when it's sat on top of the sleepers. They're just the right height and very easy to cut. Not particularly stiff, but not particularly floppy. So craft foam, that's what you're after. And I'm going to use grey just because I've used black elsewhere and I fancy a change. So historically around this section I've used card, and that's been very successful. It's just a normal card, but now I'm looking to put this in place. I'm actually just going to, in this one it's quite easy, you can just slot it under because this is hollow, so you can slide it in, get it nicely lined up. That's why I'm having so problems getting one piece of foam into a bit of card. Blimey, probably because it's not straight. But there we go. And I can butt it up on this end as well. Okay, and then I need to transfer this track work on. And it can't be easier because all you have to do is keep it nice and smooth, don't let it distort, and just press, preferably pressing down. If you press too much sideways, but like I was just doing, you actually move the foam. And then you can flip it over and you've got a wonderful cut line just to cut this foam. Now, when cutting this foam, it's worth saying remember to cut on the outside, which is the bit that you're doing. So, knife, I'm just going to cut it on this because this is my future C. And the trick is actually just being able to see it. And, I mean, the knife just slices through it so easily. Probably a little too easily, if I'm honest. It's easy to slip, but it's not so expensive that if you get it wrong, whoops, you can't do it again. And then you can slide it in. If you're wondering what the ties are all doing here, I was using those as my spacers for my card. Oh, yes, you can put it in the right way up, Kathy. That would help. It's been a long day. There we go. And it's easy enough, not quite sure what that little dent is there, to just push it on. And if there's any gaps, you can just use a bit of masking tape to pull them in while you glue, and it's slightly stretchy and it will work. So I'm just going to glue that piece in place. Now what do I use to glue it? I actually just use white glue and a little bit of masking tape to pull it right up against the edge. So let me just find my masking tape, bit of masking tape and a bit of white glue. Now it's a bit low, whoops, on this other side, and you can see I had things in here lining these up so they were a bit higher. So what I'm going to do is just put in an offcut of foam, which you can see it's easy enough to do, just to get it to the right height, so it's got something to sort of sit on. So glue. This is just white glue. It's called tacky glue, which means it's a bit thicker, which is good because it doesn't kind of move quite as, it's just a bit thicker, so it's easier to use. And then I'm just going to check how far up I need to come. So it's to there. Just run a bead of white glue along here. Now it's worth saying you need to make sure that your track work is bulletproof at this point, because it's hard to get to it once this is done. And the other thing is, you might have noticed I've now got a floating end at this end. That is never good. I don't mind if it dips in the middle a bit, but at this end, oops, I need to put just a little bit more in for it to sit on. Let's just put a piece across here and make sure I can push that up. Make sure that that sits under both ends. And you can see I need to actually trim this here. So for now, I'm just going to take that corner off. This bit of concrete's going to get trimmed. There we go. Down there. And put a bit of glue on there. I think actually it's a bit, trim it a bit more. Doesn't need to be that. I always keep all my off bits just for doing things like this with. There we go. And then, where did it come to? Well, it's easy enough, you'll see in a sec, just to put it on. So let's put this in place, squeezing it into this bit. And the hardest bit is getting it into this bit of plastic. Who'd have thought? And then getting it in at this end. And then just, yeah. So at this end, I'm then just going to put a squidgen of glue in the middle there. Now it's very convenient that this is just the right size for the bit that I want, the height-wise. So you just need to make sure that whatever track you're using is the right height. And where this gap is here, I'm just going to pull it with this so that it's up against this edge. There we go. And I'm going to do the same here. Carefully trying not to get it into here. There we go. So now if you were to look under there, it would be nice and tight against here. And it can do that because it's got plenty of sort of up pull in it. So here we go. I'm going to put another edge against that eventually, and I think this is going to come in a bit and then get capped here. So still leaving it loose. And there we go, first piece in. Now I'm going to leave this to set before I do the bit in the middle, but it's worth saying that this is already lined up very nicely for doing the middle. I'll spare you the 4 hours of video that I have for fitting the rest of the foam, but suffice to say it takes a while. So the top tips I can give you, having fitted quite a lot of foam now, is do watch your flangeways are wide enough. They end up looking wider than you want them to quite often, just because with curves, if they're too tight, then it forces the wheel off. The other thing is to watch out your foam doesn't rise. I had one turnout that continually derailed everything when I tested it. And it was because my foam was a little bit proud of the track and they were just coming off and floating quite happily down the foam rather than sitting on the rails. So again, just be careful that everything sits beneath rail head level. Otherwise, when you come to try and clean the track or when you do anything else, you'll really struggle. And the final tip I'm going to give you is where my foam and my card areas meet, I have gaps, and they do react differently to water and heat, and I get cracks appearing. And you'll see that in all my final photos, even when it's painted. They're going to get some grass and some weeds and some other detritus and maybe the odd bit of board or something over them, so that they don't appear as bad. But no matter how much I tried, I could fix them all, I could fill them, I could sand them, and they just reappeared the next day. Typical. But mentioning filling does make me want to say one thing. I filled some of the edges where I didn't quite cut things right. Perhaps not so much on the foam, but even on the foam there were areas where I just didn't cut it right and it was a complicated piece, and I thought, oh. And I filled all the gaps between the foam. And for that I used the acrylic putty that I used last week, and that is Deluxe Materials acrylic putty. Goes on very easily, you can sand it normally, though of course you wouldn't sand over foam. So I just make sure you wipe it smooth because it's very hard to sand over foam. And that's it, that's all I did. It just took a heck of a long time. Whew, so that's the foam done. Boy, that took a long time. Did I get incredibly bored fitting some of the foam towards the end. So I filled all the gaps, I've done everything. All I need to do now is test run. So I'm going to go away and play with some trains for a bit, clean the track, get everything ready, and just check that it all runs. I'm really pleased how this came out. It was easy to get to go around the track work. I did have problems in one or two of the flangeways. I ended up cutting them back, and you can cut it back afterwards. You're not stuck with this foam. If you take up a sharp knife, even when you've painted it and everything, you can still go and trim it later. So that's a huge blessing. Easy to do. The other thing is it becomes very simple to do good looking paintwork and track all sorts of interest on it, because it's just a smooth surface, but it has a slight texture that's really great for tarmac at a HO scale. So overall, really impressed with foam, like it and would use it again.
Come on! Not shaking anything when I'm doing it. What am I doing wrong? Oh, moving! It's an iPad! It's my feet! You need your hands! You need your hands! Keep going! Keep going! Keep working! Excellent! Oh God! You're getting me! Get it! Okay. Is it picking it up? I'm only small. Well, like a really light touch. It's kind of fun. Okay. You need a bit of practice, I think. Oh, got that one here. Yes, that's making a difference. There we go. Okay, here we go. Here we go. And then, oof. Yes. No, I get it. Hard work. I get it. It's going to be fun. Okay. Can I stop now?